Hello and welcome to episode 253 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. Joining me as always is the splendid League Freak. You can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, mate?
I'm going pretty well, Andrew, the real deal Ferguson. How are you been?
Smooth sailing, my friend. I've actually been outside of the 25k radius and it looked glorious.
Nice.
It would look even better when I got to go out of the state and into a proper state, but we'll see. We're working on that one.
You're in, what do you call it, a state of confusion at the moment. It's called Victoria.
Yeah. West Germany.
West Germany. Come on, West Germany wasn't that bad. Should we thank our wonderful sponsor for this podcast over the last couple of months, really?
I think that's a splendid idea.
Let's do that. You know, sometimes in life you have problems, and problems always need good solutions. And if you've got really, really hairy genitals, one of those solutions is manscaped.com. If you go to manscaped.com and put in our exclusive code, which is NRL, you get 20% off and free shipping of all of the best equipment money can buy in terms of manscaping your genitalia. And that's what's that, 60% of life is about, really?
At least.
Yeah. So go there. I recommend the Lawnmower 3.0. It's waterproof. It holds a great charge. Actually, it's got a rechargeable stand, has a light on it, has ceramic blades. It'll get the job done every time. You'll get compliments on how your man stuff looks. People will be like, wow, really, really got your act together. You'll be like, that's right, boss, I do. So go to manscaped.com and put in that code NRL. 20% off, free shipping. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee, and they ship all over the world.
You can't ask for more than that.
You really can't.
Do you reckon the NRL would invest in it? If they were smart, they would.
They would. There are worse things you could invest in than something from Manscaped. Maybe we should talk about some of the worse options today.
Well, I'm going to read directly from the article. It was in the Australian on the weekend.
Okay, by Brent Reed, this one.
Brent Reed has said that there's been a rumour doing the rounds for a while now that there are people within the NRL and ARL Commission who would be interested in buying a stake or the entirety of England's Super League if the opportunity arose. Brent Reed was told that the Commission has asked an investment firm to look into it for them. The idea that they would take control of the two major rugby league competitions in the world and use their expertise to help Super League shake off their financial shackles that have hampered the code in England. The Commission could then ensure the game continues to grow globally and have a say in the makeup of Super League in terms of the nations represented. Money, whether the NRL can afford it and whether it would be worthwhile, will eventually dictate whether it is realistic.
It's interesting. It's the first time we've seen anything in terms of the NRL actually has looked into this.
Other than stuff that we've suggested that they could probably consider.
Yeah, exactly. And
before we get into it, can I just say, do you think Brent Reed listens to the podcast?
Oh, 100%. By the way, hey, Reedy, how you doing?
Yeah, mate. Manscape yourself, man.
Yeah. Go to manscape.com. 20% off. NRL's your code. It's interesting that they've looked into it, that they've got an investment firm, as I said, to look into this possibility. I think that the NRL would only do it if certain conditions were met. They definitely wouldn't be looking at Super League as it is right now as what they want the product to be. I think that they would say, look, we'll buy into it, but we want some immediate changes. And we'll talk about what we think those changes are today.
Absolutely. I think the first thing they would be looking at overall is, well, obviously the first thing to look at is making sure that this thing turns a profit for them. That's it. They're not going to be looking for a huge profit, because I think even the NRL will be realistic and say, look, we know we're not going to get a huge profit out of this. If we can get a profit of even $1, we're not costing ourselves money. And their first goal would be to make sure they set up a salary cap that functions similar to the one in the NRL, whereby the players get paid, which would take a burden off the clubs.
It really would. I think the main thing with that, though, is that their salary cap would drop immediately over there to something sustainable.
Oh, it'd have to be. And the thing is, it would drop to something sustainable that would actually help the lower clubs compete with the higher clubs, and
Mm-hmm.
the higher clubs would have to start cutting players so that they would fit under the cap.
Mm-hmm.
So that redistribution of talent would help to make the competition more even, more unpredictable as to who's going to be the premier, which is going to help with getting more eyeballs on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Something else I think the NRL will be looking at doing, which will be a hard sell in the UK, but definitely needs to happen, is completely dicking the promotion relegation system.
Yeah, that would end. That would have to end. It'd just be. It's such a terrible system. It undermines the competition so badly, undermines clubs, and it sets up a really unhealthy setup for everyone from top to bottom. And I think between those two teams getting the costs under control in terms of how much teams are allowed to spend on players, and then making sure that teams know there is no, there's no trapdoor that you're going to fall out for, if you have a bad season or two. I think they're the two main things they would want, and then they would actually get into the real difficult phase of it, which I think is where they would want teams to be based, who they want in their competition that they now own, and who they don't want.
Can I put forward a suggestion there?
Yeah.
And it's going to seem ridiculous at first.
Okay.
Because one thing we've talked about an awful lot is how England needs to expand its borders further, and it should be able to do it given that it's so close to a lot of Europe.
Yep.
But I think first up, to try and keep costs down a little bit, is they should consider having a 16-team comp, and half the competition is made up of teams that currently exist. So, and I'd say 4 teams from Yorkshire, 4 teams from Lancashire, and then open slather for the other 8 teams. That way you're not dragging along the worst teams everywhere possible. You're going to have, 8 teams that are from heartland areas, which is what the NRL's got. They've got a bunch of teams from Sydney, the heartland area, and Brisbane that they've started up there. But then it opens up the door for another 8 teams, the other half of the competition, to come from anywhere. And I'd be looking at Toronto, Ottawa, New York, Catalan, Toulouse. Yeah, there's 5. You start looking around the rest of Europe, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, wherever you want. But you've got 8 other spots to plug there. And every club's going to know that if they get the approval and get the nod there, they're not at a risk of going back down to Championship. They're staying in Super League.
You know what? I hadn't thought of that. My thought was that the NRL would definitely want more teams in the competition. I think they would want enough teams in the competition that they could have a full home and away season, and it be a long season. I think they would be willing to have a much longer season in Super League than we have in the NRL. And I don't think that's a problem. I think that's something that English fans are used to and English clubs are used to. I don't think you could have a 22-round competition in England. I think that'd be ridiculous. The idea of having different divisions and having, say, the teams from Yorkshire and Lancashire in one division and then another division with the expansion clubs, I haven't thought of that before. That's a really good idea.
I'm not surprised. I'm not. No, I'm saying I'm not surprised that you're saying it's a good idea. I think because when you consider that there's been a core number of teams that have been consistently in Super League and not really at threat of dropping out for a while now.
Yeah.
To me, if you're going to take over, then you've got to start with those teams that have consistently been there because they've proven that they are viable, and you don't need to put in much effort there. And that's the core of your new comp. And you can build your competition around that lot because that's where the majority of your fans are. That's what the majority of the TV money is tuning in to watch, I guess, at that stage too, because they're always there. So you work from there and you expand out from there. And then, you could look at every 5-10 years, something like that. You could look at doing a promotion relegation then if you wanted to. If a team in Championship is proven that they're absolutely dominating that competition year in, year out, and they need to move up, and there's a team in Super League that's just dead in the arse the whole time. Switch them around. But put in a process in place saying, right, you have to do this in order to prove that you deserve to come up to Super League.
Yeah.
Or you have to be failing at all of these levels to prove that you don't deserve to be here anymore. So everyone's got a marker that they need to meet. So you can still sort of have promotion relegation, but the fear of being cut is not hanging over your head like an axe the whole time. It's something that you can get away from if you just change change an owner, change a few business practices, have one decent season here and there, instead of just thinking, right, we're going to go spend all our money on 1 year and hope it works and then coast and hope we get through the next year. And, the current system is really diabolical for the teams that are midfield and lower field.
It really is. Look, it would definitely cut costs doing it that way with 2 divisions. It'll be interesting to see how English fans took that on board. It'll be interesting to see what they want, what the broadcasters would want. I wonder how they would react to having 2 divisions in Super League, especially ones that are completely divided like that in terms of the clubs that are, from what we would normally call the heartlands versus clubs that are expansion clubs alone. It's not the worst idea. I can think of way worse ideas, but I think that one thing that idea does is it says, look, this is the cap on the teams that we're going to have that are currently where Super League is based. And we're going to have a cutoff point there. After that, we are looking at the business side of it. We're looking at expansion and we're looking towards the future. And I think that's something it's something that English Rugby League has needed for 40 years now.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, this is a system I'd have in place purely at the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if finances aren't improving after 5 years, if it's not returning a profit after 5 years, then you've got to start looking at those teams that are all in there and say, right, now, history, legacy, all of that's out the window. Just like they did in 97, 98, 99 over here.
Mm-hmm.
We need to look at what's working as a business. And if you don't work as a business, you're gone.
Yeah, and one of the things that would be really interesting to see is how they reacted to the salary cap being pulled way back. Because I remember in Australia, a lot of English fans probably don't remember this, where our clubs were running on a shoestring budget for a long time because that's all the game was making. The game was owned by media companies, and the media companies weren't going to charge themselves heaps of money to broadcast the game. So they always undersold the NRL to themselves, funnily enough. And it meant that the NRL salary cap was very, very low. And the NRL, yeah, it really was. And the NRL clubs, they had to just stick with it because spending more than that was just going to see the competition run broke. And I think that's what we've got a problem with in Super League is that the business model is just not sustainable. And we're seeing that in terms of people are expecting the broadcasting rights to be cut right back. We're seeing, the advertising money coming into the game is just, it's bottomed out. It's terrible. Where they're giving away things now. And it's become a regular occurrence. So that's terrible. And something needs to change. And I think that with the NRL coming in without any baggage, and because they've bought into it as a business, I think that it would be something that would be very hard to argue with if they said, look, we've got to cut these number of teams out, or we've got to bring in clubs from these locations to make this a viable competition and a viable investment. Otherwise, the alternative is Super League looks to a future of semi-professionalism, which it's at now. There's players right now that are, the minimum wage was scrapped. So it's a semi-professional competition now, but the next step is for everyone to have a job during the week. You don't want that to happen.
No, and shouldn't be going to that either.
No.
I think the one thing that the NRL is going to try and do in order to make this work, and it was going to come down to TV rights deals, and they know they're not going to get much of the TV broadcasting rights in the UK just by selling Super League on its own. But if they're selling a package that is the Super League and the NRL together, that's something that Sky might be interested in, and it's something that Fox over here would be interested in, because both could have 24/7 NRL channel just on one channel, play the whole lot. You get both competitions, both sides of the world. They may not be able to double the, or they won't ever get close to equaling what they're getting on TV rights deals now in Australia. but they should be able to get a hell of a lot more than what the Super League's currently getting for its TV rights deals in England.
You would think so.
Yeah.
And especially being able to say, look, we're Super League, and not only do you get the content that we've got, which is locally relevant, but you get this overseas content from the National Rugby League. That would be massive for them to be able to package that together. And also, like, you know, state of origin as well. You'd probably throw that in.
You would definitely. International footy?
Well, international football, I have a feeling that that's controlled by the International Rugby League, and they get the money for that. And it's split between the host nations of the game, or the two nations that are playing. So I don't know. Sorry,
no, you're definitely absolutely right there. But I dare say it's something that the NRL would be. It could probably dominate the conversation on with our International Rugby League about that when it comes to England, Australia, New Zealand games.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Like they could probably just say, look, at the end of every year, other than in a World Cup year, we will have a tri-series or a quad nation series, France, Australia, England, New Zealand. Right? That way you get 2 teams in the Southern Hemisphere, 2 teams in the Northern Hemisphere. We're going to run it. We'll get the International Rugby League to say, yes, this is a legitimate official competition, and we'll televise it. That'll be your jewel in the crown at the end of the year. You'll get that international games as well.
Mm-hmm.
That would be out. That would work. And that'd be the mindset behind it. And then I suppose the other one would just be obviously digital networking.
Yeah, I mean, owning 2 properties like that would be really interesting to see how they brought them together. I also wonder if it would bring up the prospect of, if you've got Super League under the NRL banner overall, or the Australian Rugby League banner, whatever way you want to put it, you might, and they've got a set system in place where, you know, players are getting minimum wage. We know what the salary cap is. It's properly policed. There's standards in terms of how clubs are run financially, how they're run in terms of, you know, player training and coaching and things like that. I wonder if it sets up the possibility where you could see the winner of Super League coming in as a 9th team, or the top 2 teams in Super League, that maybe the grand finalists coming into the NRL as teams 9 and 10 in the NRL final series. And that would be just something extra the NRL could do. They own both competitions, and it would be something that would bring, you know, to bring interest from broadcasters, I'm sure of it, from both sides of the world.
Yeah, you could do. Is bring the NRL clubs into the Challenge Cup.
Well, yeah, and I've written about this before, where even if it was just late in the Challenge Cup, where maybe it was NRL teams who didn't make the final series or something, maybe the 9th place team in the NRL goes straight into the quarterfinals or something like that. You know, and all of this would take a lot of change in terms of how the calendar is over in the UK. But all of this now gets to be on the table because it's all run by the same company. Yeah,
that's right. And when you start mixing the 2 competitions together, as we've seen when the Warriors came in, and the Broncos as well when they came in, and the Giants / Seagulls / Chargers, whatever the hell they became. When you brought in teams from those new expansion markets, it didn't take long for those areas to have the quality of their play improve.
Yeah.
Pretty rapidly. I mean, we saw it in New Zealand. They were ambling along as the 3rd best nation in the world in the late 80s, early 90s. But it didn't take long after the Warriors came along that their standards started to lift.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, they won the World Cup. Doesn't take much.
No.
So if you start mixing the 2 codes together,
yeah,
you start to lift the quality of the play in England. And that's only a good thing for International Rugby League, because then, that then lifts France along, because they're in the comp with them as well. Canada will start to, if they can start getting a few local players in there, start to bring them along. And, everyone's starting to rise at the same time. It's just good for international football.
Yeah, well, like you look at the Catalan Dragons just the last couple of years, like they've been pretty bloody solid in Super League. And they're only going to get better. Like I think it's now pretty well established that, if you're taking the top 5 teams in Super League, one of them has to be the Catalan Dragons.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting to see where they are. And, if you could get a second French team in the competition, in your new competition, even look to get a third team. Like, I think because the NRL would be looking at this as a business from their standpoint, they'd be able to go in and say, look, all your feelings and stuff, all your history and stuff, we don't care about that. We've come in, we've got a plan to inject money into the game, inject money into clubs. We want the competition to be better overall, and take it or leave it, because, we'll be fine. The NRL's always going to be fine, but this is maybe a chance for Super League to allow an outside owner to come in and make the difficult decisions that nobody has made for 40 years.
Exactly. And look, one great idea would be, as what you hinted on there, is France has 3 teams in there, because then you could have 2 French teams playing across at least 2 days every week, and 3 days most weekends.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the decisions, not all of them, will be made on what they want out of broadcasters and where they can get the money in. And so for instance, you might see 4 French teams in, and people might be saying, well, how the hell are they going to manage that? Because there's really only 2 French teams that are geared up and ready to go for Super League, and I'm talking about the Catalan Dragons and Toulouse here. Toulouse is ready to rock and roll. But the NRL might say, yeah, that's fine. We want 4 teams, and we're going to fund it. Yeah. And because the salary cap would be lower, it's not going to take as much money. It might take, half as much money as an NRL club takes.
Exactly. And if you've got 4 teams there, as I said, 3 or 4 teams there, that's enough to dangle a carrot in front of a French broadcaster and say, look, you're going to have 2, 3 French games on every day of the week. One on Friday, one on Saturday, one on Sunday.
Yeah, I think
you'll be able to dangle that carrot and get a TV deal in France as well out of that.
Yeah. And the other thing you might see too is you might see Super League switch to what we kind of see in the Premier League, in terms of you can have games pretty much every day of the week. And I think everything would be on the table. I think that if the NRL looked at this from the point of view of clean slate to start with, and what do we want from a Northern Hemisphere club competition that will also have a bit of a base that's ready to go, and that could be exciting. They need to make sure that they don't get stuck in the politics of English rugby league, though, and that's going to be the difficult thing, and we'll talk about that, in this episode. Well,
that's right. I think because the one thing that where the policy is going to come up is about which teams get included. Because the other thing would be too that instead of creating a whole heap of new teams in England, they need to move some. For example, Salford has to become Manchester.
You know what? It's interesting you bring that up, because that would be one of the first things I'd say. And I have a feeling that, look, Salford changed their name when Kokash come in and he said, we're changing back to the old name, and fans loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so brilliant, I brought the bloody website address. But I think that if the NRL was coming in and saying, we're going to invest in all of these clubs, Salford, you can either, be one of the edge teams, or you can be the Manchester Red Devils. Which one would you rather be? I'm pretty sure that Salford would say, we'll be the Manchester Red Devils.
Yeah, lock us in. You can sit there and scrap to stay as Salford, or you can be locked in as the Manchester team.
Yep. Because I can tell you, as a Penrith Panthers fan, if that option was put to my team and somebody said, listen, you can be the Penrith Panthers and maybe make it, or lock you in and be the Sydney Panthers, I'd say, where's my Sydney Panthers jersey?
That's right. You want your team.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all they'd be doing, is they could still play out of the same stadium, or you can move them to another stadium, doesn't matter. They're going to have to be called Manchester. They have to be, completely representative of Manchester, not Salford.
Yeah, and look, I think that there'll be things like what we saw after the Super League war over here, minimum standards for stadiums that the NRL would bring into Super League. They'd obviously get costs under control. The policing of the salary cap would just be ramped up to a huge level. So a lot of basic stuff that the NRL put in place early on, and stuff that rugby league in Australia is really renowned for. It's stuff that Super League and English Rugby League has not had before in a lot of cases. So that'd be interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. There would be name changes. It'd be interesting to see which teams were willing to move and which teams weren't willing to move, and who makes it and who doesn't. I think that we're obviously going to have a look at the teams that we think the NRL would want in, the teams that we think they'd want from expansion markets. People are going to get upset by the stuff we say, but I think that it's the sort of attitude that the NRL would come in with, and it would be a take it or leave it thing. It's like, well, if you don't want the money, you don't want the injection of funds, you don't want the most profitable rugby competition on planet Earth to come in and sort your lot out, that's fine. We'll go away and see how things go.
We'll take our money with us.
Yeah, exactly, because I think that the alternative is the Rugby Football Union do it down the track.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, you've mentioned it before, but they need to have a team in Birmingham.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it's too big of a city to leave out.
I fully agree. We've mentioned Manchester. Probably need to have a team around Newcastle.
Yeah, I think they'd want a team in Newcastle. I think that they'd want a team in London as well.
Oh, definitely one in London. One would be the minimum in London, to be honest.
Yeah. I think they'd sit down and they would really love Bradford back. I know Bradford the Bradford Bulls are basically dead. Let's be honest. They're playing at friggin' Dewsbury.
Yeah.
But I think that the NRL would say, listen, there's a city that knows rugby league, that's got a brand that they know well, and we would like to resurrect that brand. So I wouldn't be shocked if they said, make a new club, call it the Bradford Bulls, start it over again, and leave the mess behind that has been the Bradford Bulls over the last number of years.
No, fully agree. That makes complete sense to me. Where else would they need to get a team?
And you know what you and me have talked about so far is cities, and we haven't talked about the history of clubs. We haven't brought up one single town, anything like that. And I think this is the way the NRL would look at it. You want the big media markets, and that's where you've got to aim for. Can't rely on towns anymore.
That's right. You've got to look at the big markets. You've got to go for where the big bunches of population is, and you kind of want to try and get teams. I know the NRL doesn't do this, okay, but you need to have teams from different corners of the nation. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have the chunk of them along the M62. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Which is where the majority of your team and your fans are. You don't want to alienate them all, because that is literally the heartland. That's where the majority of your money and your fans are coming from. But you've also got to move away from that in some sense, because it's too condensed there.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to pull a few teams away from there, spread them out a little bit. If some teams have got to relocate, so be it. They can keep their history, they can keep their playing squad, their colours, everything like that. Just move them a little bit away take them into a new area.
Mm-hmm.
Some might have to move a bit further than others.
Mm-hmm.
So be it. If it means that they survive, then that's something that we should be looking at and saying, you know what, we've kept this team alive in their history. We just moved them somewhere else so that they can survive.
Yeah.
Continue on. And they can do shit like the Dragons and the Tigers do in the NRL, where they play a bunch of games at their new venue and play a bunch of their old ones. So, they're appeasing both sets of fans. You're not going to appease them all, but, you're going to appeal to the majority of them.
You are. And look, there'll be English fans that'll be very angry to hear all that. If the St. George Dragons can merge, any team can merge. If we can have foundation clubs like the Balmain Tigers and Western Suburbs Magpies merge, any Super League team can merge if it means survival.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing that needs to be put to these clubs is say, right, we need to see your bottom line. If you're making money, we will talk about you in the next step. If you're not making money, we've got we've got two options for you. One's going to be merge, the other one's going to be relocate, or a third one is die.
Yeah, definitely. And I also wonder if, because it would be under the NRL banner, and look, you might have the NRL say we're going to link up every NRL club with the Super League club. And then they might be able to bring in some sort of contracting system where they say, and I'll use Penrith as an example. Penrith say, look, we've got Matt Burton and he's a first grade 5'8", and we haven't got a spot open in first grade right now. He then is able to go onto a Super League contract that is still controlled by the Panthers, where he's basically under contract with the Panthers, but he then gets allocated to a Super League club. And obviously this is something he would sign up to.
It'd be like a feeder club for Penrith, so to speak.
Yeah. But at a higher level.
It wouldn't be a feeder club. It'd be a club that they're married up with. So it's the only team that they will feed a player to, and vice versa.
Yeah, and he gets to have a guaranteed, say, 3-year deal. They might do it in blocks, I don't know. He gets a 3-year deal. He gets to play for his Super League club. He's still under contract for the Panthers, but he gets to earn more than he would in the New South Wales Cup. He gets, some level of experience at a higher level, and, he can still go back to Penrith at the end of that contract, or even mid-contract. It might be something that they can bring players in and out of that contract slot for. There's all sorts of possibilities it opens up.
In that case too, I mean, Penrith could probably still pay his salary, so it doesn't have to be a burden on the English side either.
Yeah, 100%.
So they've got all their salary cap available for other players, particularly English players. I mean, that's what we've got to be doing here, is trying to get as many up-and-coming English players playing rugby league.
Mm-hmm.
And getting the quality of those players to be better and better and better, not slowly disintegrating and getting worse and going backwards, and then getting to the point where they need to rely on tweaking of the international rules in order to get Australian players to play for them, which is the situation they're in now, which is absolutely dire for English rugby league.
It really is, and it's gross, and no one wants to see that happen. We don't want to see it happen where, they're running out an English team and they're all singing "God Save the Queen" in an Aussie accent. It's friggin' ridiculous.
Or they're singing "Advanced Australia Fair" when it's playing, even though they're wearing a Great Britain jumper.
Yeah, exactly. Look, and you've got to wonder how much. I mean, if you're at a Super League club that's owned by an NRL club, or not even owned, it's linked up with or invested by an NRL club, and that you've got, even if you break into that top 30 in an NRL side's opinion, you get a minimum contract in Australia of $100,000. Like, that's the minimum.
Yeah.
It's a big incentive, and it might be something that will drive English rugby league players to have more depth, be better overall. Because at the moment, if you're a young bloke in English rugby league, you've got to be a bloody good player before you are not a semi-professional. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you've got to do it quickly.
Very quickly. Otherwise, it's like, how many years can you devote to saying, I want to become a professional rugby league player in the UK, before you just got to get a normal job? It's not very long.
Exactly. So those are the key things. I mean, what other international markets should they be trying to get in there? If we're going to have, say, eight or maybe even 10, 12 teams from England,
yeah,
and free up, 4 to 6 teams from around the world, I guess, at least.
Yeah, look, I think they definitely want the 2 French teams, Catalans and Toulouse, and that's easy. That's really easy. I think they'd want Toronto. I really do.
Definitely.
I think that you got a foot in the North American market. It'd be the biggest city in professional rugby league, which is saying something outside of London. It'd be the second biggest city. There's too many positives there to walk away from, and I think the NRL, that'd be one of the first things they'd say is like, hey, we want to talk to the people that want to take over Toronto and see what they've got to say. And if they didn't go with that consortium, I think that they'd probably run it themselves on some level, like they did with the Storm, for a very long time. I think I wonder if they'd want a team in Paris again, because Super League used to have a team in Paris.
They did, Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, I wonder if they would want that again. I kind of feel like they might. I
I
think it'd be.
reckon if it's a third team,
Mm,
I think that's a very, very tempting opportunity.
mm,
The other one that would be tempting too would be to have a team based in the US, so you can have a US Canada, you know, one or two clashes between those two teams every year.
yeah, and look at that. With that being a local journey, it's going to cut down on the travel costs. And I know it's only a couple of games a year, but it's still a couple of games a year where it cuts down on costs.
Exactly.
Because all of this is going to be with an eye on the finances, and that's a big part of this. So yeah, a North American team. I don't know where you'd base that team. I don't know if you go with New York or you look for something new. If you look for an established team, someone like the Philadelphia Fight for a very long time were one of the top clubs in the US.
Would a team in say Denver or Chicago be more fitting, or maybe one in Texas?
Look, I don't know. I think you'd have to talk with. I would talk with the people that were in rugby league over there, to be honest with you, and I'd say, look, where it could, because I don't know much about where the rugby strongholds are over there. I'd have a look at that. I'd tap into the local knowledge. I really would. I think that you could make a really poor decision by just putting a pin down and saying we want a team here,
Yeah.
and not having the support of the local rugby league community. And they've got their own community that is it's its own thing, and it has been for a very long time. And so I would tap into that and see what they had to say about it. I'd look at the markets that are available. But I think two teams in North America would be great. Toronto and a US team would be perfect.
So
And you know what? I think say the NRL invested next year. I wouldn't be. Is that thunder?
yeah, we're finally getting a thunderstorm here.
Wow, that's some loud thunder.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they said we're going to hold off on the two North American teams until say 2023 or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that probably makes sense, to be honest. Just to try and keep the cost down, and I suppose get the US and the Canada teams, I guess, proven that they're worthwhile and viable again after all this drama that's gone on there.
Yeah, and get through the COVID period as well.
Yeah. I suppose find genuine owners with shit tons of cash.
Yeah.
That would be the key point. Because the support's there, especially for the Canada team. The support's there. That's not a problem.
I wonder if they would look at a team in Barcelona.
Yeah, that's another team that would be worthwhile, definitely looking into.
Because they'd have a natural rivalry with the Catalan Dragons, just for being locals.
Absolutely.
For the Catalan region.
Sure.
And once again, it would cut down on those travel costs too, which would be fantastic for the competition.
Tell you what I'd do is I'd start getting club teams from all of the European comps that are going on, and just get the premier from each one of those comps to be involved in one part of the Challenge Cup for a few years.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. That would be fantastic.
And that would be a great way of getting them to help build their quality up a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Get a bit of eyeballs on their game and tell them all there's always going to be an opportunity for one of you to make it to Super League.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to keep getting better.
And we've talked about the Challenge Cup has needed modernised for a very long time. It's been dying for a long time.
At the moment, it's just a bunch of pub teams fighting for one another for a little while until they, get smashed by some pro or semi-pro team, and then we end up with just Super League teams playing each other in the end.
Yeah, and it deserves more than that. It's one of our greatest competitions in this game. And if you added all of that together with maybe the ninth place NRL team comes in the quarters or the semis or whatever, it makes it a competition where it's been a pure knockout competition. Makes it interesting. Makes it something that you're like, oh, I wonder how they go.
Yeah, I tell you what I'd do is I'd just have a random draw
Mm-hmm.
of any of the final 9 teams. Sorry, bottom 8 teams in the NRL.
Oh, really? So a random to any of the
Just pull
so
one
it'll
out
be
of a hat.
yeah, yeah,
There we go. That
that's
team's now gone over to England.
yeah.
You're going to play for the Challenge Cup.
Oh, man, it'd be so exciting to see that happen.
Oh, hell yeah.
I wonder what the TV because it's at a pretty good time for Australia, the final Challenge Cup finals.
Mm.
I bet
Then
the
you start
TV,
getting all those Australian eyes on it.
yeah, the TV ratings over here, I think it'd be not too bad.
Well, it'd be better than what they're currently getting.
Yeah, which is none.
And look, this gets me to my next point, and that is sponsorship, because that's something that the Super League has been, let's be honest, completely shithouse at. And so the NRL's never really had too much of a drama with, despite some of the dramas that they've had with the game.
Mm-hmm.
They've never had an issue getting a top quality, high paying sponsor for the game, and minor sponsors as well. And that's going to help an awful lot, because at the moment Super League's giving that shit away because they can't find anyone to pay for it after they pretty much pissed on their own feet when they gave it away to Stobart. That became the new marketing point. The next company to come along that they approached to be the naming rights sponsor for the competition said, all right, let's start at free and work our way from there.
Exactly.
You've got no bargaining point. You've got nothing to work from. And that's been the consistent issue that they've had.
Exactly.
So the NRL can come in and say, right, all that shit from the Super League's gone now. They're not running the game anymore. We are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we do things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's got to happen.
You also got to wonder how, there's betting is very big. The betting advertising is very big in the NRL. You got to wonder what sort of deals they can set up, because most of our betting companies now are owned by European betting companies.
Yeah.
That once they took those regulations off of the Australian betting companies from having to be owned in Australia by Australian companies, but the English and European companies just took them over in a space of about 6 months. Imagine the deals you can do for both competitions by saying, hey, we've got these 2 professional rugby league competitions that are in Australia and the UK and France and North America. What type of deal can we do with something like that? I'm sure those betting companies would absolutely love that sort of exposure.
Falling over their feet.
Really would be. And it's deals like that which will inject not only money into the Australian Rugby League, but so much more money into the Super League as well.
Yeah, and because there's so many sports betting agencies out there, and it's not just the ones you think of like Ladbrokes, Sportsbet, those sort of things. You've also got things like DraftKings, and these sort of those sort of fantasy sports things that are now going big, especially in the US.
Yeah,
but they're also taken off over in the UK as well. They would jump on board because they are making good coin.
Well, you even just think about having the ability to go to companies like that and saying, we're looking to we need somebody that can come on board and who wants the user base of the Australian Rugby League fans and the European Rugby League fans and some North American Rugby League fans and some French Rugby League fans to run our official fantasy rugby league competitions. Like, there's so many giant deals you could do that even if Super League's just getting a small percentage, and their fair percentage, like not being undercut and the money going straight to Australia, just their fair percentage. But because they're hooked onto the bigger deal that the NRL can do because of the Australian competition, it can only be a positive thing for Super League clubs.
Of course. I mean, look, DraftKings, I brought that up because they regularly have competitions run, not sometimes weekly, but not always every week, where the first place winner in that competition wins $1 million US.
Mm-hmm.
They've got coin, and if you throw that out there as we're going to make you our official fantasy sports partner. And this is what people can win. They can win, like, say, £500,000 or something like that every week if you're the best of. He's not going to get involved in that.
Exactly. How about, like, I mean, if you get a betting company that takes over as the official betting partner of the NRL and Super League, how much do they put on the line if you get every winner from both competitions? You know, like, there's so many things that can be done. It's really exciting to think about, but it all comes down to a base level of the NRL comes in and says, we need certain markers to be hit with any competition that we buy into. And I think that that's where the expansion clubs come into it. That's where the cities in the UK come into it. That's where you're going to have to see some teams move. You're going to see some teams that are retained. You're going to see some teams that their names might change. But if it's all for a positive effect on the other end of it, and it sees the competition get bigger, stronger, more money brought into it, I can't see a downside to that.
No, and I just want to point out too that we're not sitting here promoting gambling either. I don't engage in it, but it's just an example as to one of the markets out there where the industry would be keen to dump a shit ton of money into the game, on a whim.
Yeah,
because the fan base is just spread so far, and a lot of it does have people who don't mind throwing a few coins around on betting on games and stuff.
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's just a cornered market, and that's what you want when you're going to sponsor something. You want a cornered market who you can appeal to, know that you're probably going to get a return on that as well. And the more likely they are to give you that return, the more likely they are to part with their cash and fund the game.
Definitely, and like there's the other deals you could look at. I mean, can you imagine if Game 1 of the State of Origin series was played at Wembley?
Yeah.
And all of the hurdles that you might encounter are out the way because the NRL runs rugby league over in the UK. Look, I've said for a long time now, I think the NRL should run rugby league in New Zealand. I think it'd be great for New Zealand rugby league if it ran everything over there, especially for their junior development and their junior levels of the game over there. And this would be if this is the first step they wanted to take, there are massive opportunities there for the NRL, but the much, much bigger opportunities there are for Super League and the clubs that go through, the clubs that are part of that new Super League competition. And some of them are going to be left by the wayside. Like, there's just no doubt about that. But if they're big enough and they can show that they're a level above the championship, the English championship, the NRL would be silly not to look at them.
And that's the thing is that you say, right, we're going to have, say, 4 spots available for teams who are, for the English-based teams to relocate. And if you decide you want to relocate and or merge and or relocate and merge, we will guarantee you a spot in the Super League.
Yeah.
And these are the areas that we want you to relocate to.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even throw in like, we'll help you out financially, help you keep going for a little. I might even give you a cash injection to start with.
Yeah.
Something like that is a bit of a carrot to do that sort of thing. Because condensing that competition is something that needs to be done. There's too many clubs and not enough money going around, so you're just going to have this situation where they're eating one another. So
do you think the ideal number for a Super League competition is 16?
I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably have a second grade competition be the championship, and it would be 16 clubs as well. But that would be it. I wouldn't have a League One. So I just have 32 teams, 16 pro teams, 16 semi-pro teams.
Semi-pro teams. Now, would you have the level underneath Super League, would you have that as their feeder competition like we see with the New South Wales and Queensland Cup?
Absolutely. Every single one of those championship teams would be a feeder team to a Super League side.
Yes.
So the idea would be then if you've got 3 French teams, then you'd need to have in a perfect world, you'd need to have 3 French teams in championship.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a pathways going from youngsters right through to the Super League.
Now,
and you want to build that in, and you want to make sure I'd have some strict things in there for the championship teams. Like, so if we've got a Toronto team in Super League, I want another Canadian team in Championship, and they need to have at least half their squad have to be Canadian players.
Yeah.
We want to make sure there's a pathway going on there. And you don't put in straight away, but you say, this is what your goal needs to be, okay? We're going to set it at, say, 5 players in the first year, 8 the second year, 12 the next, so on and so forth, till you get to the set number you want.
So I would be even happy with if they said and it's difficult because you don't want to hurt the expansion clubs by putting minimum standards for local players on them that sees them running out players that aren't of Super League standard.
No,
right?
I'm talking about Championship. I'm talking about Super League. Super League can do what they want.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying for the Championship, for the feeder ones,
yeah,
they need to be having local talent coming through.
Okay.
Because eventually what you expect is that they would get up to English Rugby League standards. Mm-hmm. They might be good enough to force their way into the Super League comp. And once that happens, you start lifting the quality of the play around the world.
Yeah, and like those, I think you could make the Championship a really important competition for Northern or the Northern Hemisphere Rugby League because you might see because look, England's player pool is not really very good at all at the moment. It's pretty poor actually. And they could look to start bringing in players from other parts of the world. In a similar way, we've seen the New South Wales and Queensland Cup do that over a very long time now. And that would help those players from different parts of the world step up their level of play. And that you can get picked for international teams out of that level.
No, I fully agree. That's the... Oops.
Are you all right?
Yeah. I plugged my phone in to charge it up, and I've put the wrong cable in there. I was going, why is that not charging up?
Okay, yeah, that happens.
Light just went off on it going, battery's low. Yeah, no, that's what's got to happen. I think, too, you don't need to have an English club feeding into a Super League English club. So if we've got a team in Newcastle, you can have their feeder team can be a Scottish team.
Yeah. From a different area, yeah. Look, I wouldn't have a problem to cut costs, I wouldn't have a problem if say, Toronto's local sides played in a North American competition only, like if they weren't part of the Championship. But then you're going to have Championship teams that don't have a Super League outlet, which is a bit of a problem, but I'm sure there's ways around that. I'm sure there's ways that you can fix that up. And, you might be able to have teams have deals with a couple of different teams. It's not ideal, but it may allow costs to be lower because, like, I would like to see the French teams. I'd want their players to stay in France, Well,
yeah. But I suppose a workaround could be if you for every local talent that you bring through, say 50% of their salary is included in the salary cap.
Yeah.
So you've got a bit more cap space. You can either pay those players a bit more, or you can use that cap space to buy someone else.
Yeah.
And that's a way to keep your local talent.
Yeah.
And keep them local.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's just so many opportunities you could do with Super League if you started with that clean slate. And I think that it would be important for the NRL to, and I don't think they would, get caught in that same trap that happened when Super League started over in the UK, where it was like, oh, we've got all these big ideas and give us all this money and stuff. And the money was just pissed away on a lot of clubs that don't even exist anymore. And the game didn't move a single inch. It was really, really terrible what happened.
They forced a bunch of mergers from memory, most of which did not stick.
Oh, they dissolved really quick.
And turned it up to either being complete failures and both clubs dying or one club taking over the other. And then, like Huddersfield and Sheffield, I think, merged. And then Huddersfield took them over completely and then Sheffield came back anyway on their own right. And you just went, what was the point of that?
Exactly. We all know about the Gates Hull Thunder Sharks, There's a whole load of things that happened around that time with Super League, and I just think the NRL couldn't stand for it. And that's why I wonder if you were the NRL, and look, it's going to be difficult with most Super League clubs, but it would be an ideal scenario if NRL clubs owned a piece of each Super League club. But I can see where some club owners would not want that to happen. And I understand that completely. Like if I own Wigan or I own St Helens, if I own Leeds, I'm saying to myself, well, why would I give up a share of ownership to an NRL team when I can do it myself? And look, there's positives and negatives on both sides.
Well,
but
you could say to those teams, what you could do is you could buy an NRL team.
I don't think they could afford a fraction of an hour. I don't think a lot of these owners in Super League could afford to buy a ticket to a State of Origin game, quite honestly.
No, Manly and the West Tigers would be cheap.
You reckon?
I mean, Manly doesn't even have chairs.
Yeah, that's a good.
The West
point.
Tigers don't even have a home ground.
Maybe the owner could play 5/8 for the West Tigers next year.
Or hooker.
Yeah.
It's available.
Actually, if there's one thing I know about the West Tigers, they desperately need wingers and nothing else.
And nothing else. They've also been quite vocal about the players they haven't signed so far.
Yeah, they haven't signed a lot of really good players that have had no contact with them and don't want to play for them at all.
I've got it on the download, mate.
Mm.
That they haven't signed, and this is going to come out tomorrow. They have not signed Payne Haas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can take that to the bank.
Wow. I've heard that Nathan Cleary, nothing to do with the West Tigers at all.
Yeah, they've definitely. I know for certain they've definitely not signed him.
Yeah.
They'll be announcing that too during the week.
I also know. Oh man, I wasn't supposed to say this. I'm going to say it anyway. Cameron Smith, if he doesn't play for the next year, he has to play for the Storm.
Poor bastard.
It's just, you heard it here first.
Speaking of Melbourne Storm hookers not playing for the West Tigers anymore, apparently, I'm only reading the headline here, by the way, people. On the NRL website, apparently Harry Grant went from being on his deathbed to playing for the Maroons.
Really? Harry Grant?
He probably had measles or something like that when he was 12.
What was Harry Grant on his deathbed for?
I don't know. Fighting his way back from the brink.
What?
What did I say? He probably had measles when he was 12. Here we go. His son had nearly died as a 12-year-old after a staph infection. It was 10 years ago.
Holy crap. That's the... Joe Gould, how dare you?
That's bad.
That's... It's like... At what point are they going to say, man, player XYZ could have died at childbirth? It's like, really? It's like, yeah, he could have, technically. Nothing was wrong. He's, born perfectly fine. Nothing happened. But it was touch and go there.
Yeah.
During the birth,
The chances, the mortality rate of children at that age was around about like 2%. He could have very easily been in that 2%.
Exactly.
Someone had to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's terrible.
I can't believe I predicted that before reading it.
Yeah, it shows what level some of the writing in rugby league is at right now.
Exactly. Now, also, Josh Adokar is still going to be Sydney bound in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tigers are now looking at Josh Mansour because the Tigers' problem all year was their defence in the middle, so wingers will help fix that.
Yeah, I think that Mansour will, he's a good signing for them, but the West Tigers, is there a worse run team in the NRL right now?
No. And
they're diabolical. And the worst, and I don't need to tell you this, I know that, but they're embarrassing.
They are.
Like, they're coming out with stuff that is no one's thinking about, and they're embarrassing themselves as a club. It's terrible.
As I've said before, their recruitment policy is, are you off contract? Yes. Has anyone come to approach you? No? Okay, we'll buy you.
Yeah, and
And then the coach says, what'd you buy this guy for? He was available. We don't need him.
Yeah.
We've got him now.
When did the West Tigers, recruit players like every other club like the season leading in, not the fucking weeks leading into training for the new year.
And they're just picking off randoms.
Yeah, like, oh, Mansour's available. Let's get him.
Yeah.
Like, why? You don't need a winger. Wingers are pretty easy to get. Wingers are easy to come by, especially for a Western Sydney club.
It's almost like they've forgotten that Paul Momirovski's coming back and he can play on the wing. He's also a goal kicker.
Yeah.
You got Nofaluma on the other wing. Moses Mbai he's the captain, so they're going to put him in the run-on side somewhere, and it's most likely going to be at centre.
Yep.
You got Dewey who can play at centre. He's going to be at fullback. You've got Lailua at the other centre. Why are we buying another NRL quality winger for?
But you get the feeling like if it wasn't Mansour, if it had have been some random second rower or some random, I don't know, fullback or whatever, they would have signed them. And it's like they're not signing for need. They're not signing for planning for the future or anything. They're just picking up whoever turns up on the market. Like in the off-season market when it's the poor buggers that get let go, like Mansour.
That's exactly right. It's like, let's just throw out an option to every single player out there and see who comes back with a yes.
Exactly.
And then we'll sort out the salary cap later on. So then we'll have to go and sack a whole heap of people that we actually do need, so we can fit in all these players that we don't need.
It's terrible. I said during the week, like, Tigers fans deserve so much better, and their club is so poorly run that, you know, they're a laughing stock at the moment. And they're just getting worse. Like, that's the thing. On the field, they're just going to be worse and worse as time goes on.
I think what they're doing is they're playing for that all-important market of being everyone's second favourite team.
Yeah.
And the reason being, and I've held this belief for a while, and I haven't found anyone that can prove me wrong, is that a team, a fan's second favourite team is always a team they're not threatened by.
Yes.
So for a long time, before the Asada stuff, a lot of people would have had the Sharks as being their second team because they never won a premiership, so no one was threatened by them.
Yep.
But they won a premiership, everyone hates them. Tigers, though, they jag a premiership, and that was proved by the fact they couldn't even make the finals the following years afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They're everyone's second favourite team because they're not a threat.
Well, you look at the way that people looked at the Panthers, it's like, oh, they're a young team. They're an up-and-coming team. I love watching them. I love their style of play. As soon as they started stringing wings together, people started hating their guts.
Yeah, they made the grand final. We don't like them anymore. Fuck them. Yeah. Yeah, Tigers, mate, they're not a threat, so they're everyone's second favourite team now.
Yeah.
And that's an all-important market that they're playing for. I don't know why. You must be second favourite.
Exactly.
That just means you're not the favourite.
Exactly. Well, you know what? This shows you the difference between Australian Rugby League fans and English fans. Because if you go by that, then Warrington would be everyone's second favourite team.
Speaking of, wasn't it typical to see them choking in the finals?
Yeah, it was.
They did it a week earlier than usual.
They did pretty well in that regard. Interesting finals coming up. A lot of people are. I know you said it before the podcast. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talking about it. If we ended up with the grand final between Hull FC, which is my team, and the Catalan Dragons, it would be really nice to see a new premier named in Super League for the first time in forever. And you were actually looking up some stats and stuff before the game.
So I was trying to find out the last time we had a grand final in England that didn't involve either Wigan, St Helens, or Leeds. Mm-hmm. And I'm fairly confident it was 1989-90 when Widnes beat Bradford.
It's crazy.
It's stupid. So I'm going for Hull FC, I'm going for Catalans. And because I've got a soft spot for French Rugby League, I'll be going for Catalans to win the premiership. Sorry, mate.
No, look, as a Hull FC supporter, I would love to see them win a grand final. I watched them in person at the grand final in 2006. It was an amazing experience. But there'd be something really satisfying this year in particular when Super League officials did what they did to the Toronto Wolfpack and circled the wagons up in northern England for the Catalan Dragons to then win the premiership. It'd be kind of like a big FU to everyone in Super League. and I think it would be a really good sign for rugby league in France.
Especially 2 years after the Catalan Dragons won the Challenge Cup,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then they had to pay to
Oh,
defend their title the following year.
how outrageous was that? What a this just disgusting.
Small-minded football competition.
Really, really was. And look, that's something that you would hope the NRL steps in and just gets rid of all that sort of bullshit.
So let's get to the final part of this whole story.
Okay.
An investment firm is looking at it to see whether it would be viable.
Yes.
Do you think they're going to find that it would be a viable situation in the
Not,
current situation of the game in England?
no, not even close.
No.
Yeah.
The only way it's going to work is if they can get a TV rights deal that's going to work. And I don't think any TV company in England right now is going to pay squat for rugby league. Doesn't matter who's playing. The only TV rights deal that will matter will be whether they can get more money out of Fox and or Nine to show Super League games.
So I think that
I don't think it'll be enough to make up the gap.
yeah, look, I have a feeling if the NRL has employed a company to look at this, an investment firm, I think that investment firm will actually be talking to Sky and saying, look, what would you be interested in? And they'll find out from Sky. I think they'd talk to potential advertisers. But I think as Super League currently stands right now, I think they'd come back and say, we had a look at the figures on Super League right now, and they were laughable. And I don't think it would go anywhere. I think that the NRL would be more likely to be able to start its own competition in the Northern Hemisphere from scratch and invite teams to that and be able to make that viable rather than dealing with the current Super League structure and, the teams that are involved in it.
No, I fully agree. I think that's pretty much sums up how I feel about it. I think short term, there's no investment opportunities whatsoever that are viable.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, there possibly would be, but as we went through for an hour, there's an awful lot that's got to be done there. And the biggest part of that is going to be changing the perspective and the mindsets of the small but parochial fan base that the English Rugby League has got right now.
Yeah, because
clubs give those people a lot of say. Like we saw it with Swinton.
Yeah, and I was just about to say Swinton. Like Swinton was the Swinton decision was the epitome of where English Rugby League is right now, unfortunately, where it's like, I mean, the poor people that were trying to make those changes at the clubs ended up getting death threats and things like that.
Yeah, and all they were trying to do was make the club more viable, more financially successful, and stronger so that they had a future. Yeah. And the fan base went, we'd rather it die than it goes and becomes Manchester. And so it'll happen. And then they'll bitch and moan, we should have gone and done this when we had the chance. It's too fucking late now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. It's really, really sad. Because you want all of the, like, in a perfect world, every single one of these clubs survives. And the expansion and the moves into big cities, it funds the ability for small towns to still be able to be in the big competition, Mm-hmm. But Super League has chosen a different path. It's a path that will lead to the game just slowly dying over there. And so if the NRL was able to come in and completely reverse them decisions and set it on a completely different course, it might be worth it. But as it currently stands, I really think that any investment firm would come back and they'd say, nah, not even worth looking at again anytime soon.
It's because the supporter base for the game is small over there, and knowing that you've got to make changes, it's probably going to alienate, let's be honest, probably about 35 to 40% of that small fan base. That takes an awful lot of investment opportunities away. And you've got to build up a new fan base in markets that Rugby League has failed to even consider working towards in England for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you look at You look at somewhere like Birmingham that you and me have talked about. Nothing has ever happened there, ever.
No,
And
they've
it's just down
taken
the
the odd
road.
test match there, and that's it.
Yeah, it's craziness that nothing has ever even been thought about in terms of club football, establishing a few clubs there, it's crazy to me. But it would be a big change. I think that the good thing that would come out of any NRL investment and ownership of the Super League competition is that the NRL would be so removed from the criticism of the fans that were upset by the changes that were made. And you don't want to see fans upset by something they love being changed so much, but the alternative is that all this stuff's just going to wither and die anyway. So something needs to happen, and if the NRL does it, it's great. If they find a way to establish, something bigger and better, it's fantastic. But I agree with you. I don't think that I'd be disgusted actually if the NRL decided to start pouring money into what Super League currently is.
I think I want to make clear too. We're not being flippant about this. We've often mocked the English Rugby League, but this is a genuine, serious conversation. And to prove that, I used to support a foundation club in the Balmain Tigers, and I was not opposed to them merging with Western Suburbs and becoming the West Tigers, because it meant I either had to find a new club to support, like completely brand new, that didn't represent the players or the team that I've always supported, or I could continue having part of my team still alive in this merged entity.
Mm-hmm.
So it was somewhat kept alive. So, and the desire to have your old club return for normal fans, it dissipates pretty quickly once you see your new team out there, because you're going, it's a bright, new, shiny team. They don't have the track record of the last club, So you keep watching from a different perspective, a different set of eyes. You've got a new set of fans, new junior bases that filling up your team. So you've got all these new players coming from all over the place, which you'd never really seen before. There's a lot of excitement that comes around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the team, I've often said about, how pathetic they've functioned, at least I've still got my team still there. In some capacity. It's not like I'm a North Sydney fan. I've lost my team. I've been lost to the game completely.
Yeah,
and team's still somewhat there.
And too, for even in its biggest moments, the organisation now that is the West Tigers is so much more massive than the Balmain Tigers or the Western Suburbs Magpies organisations at their highest peaks. Like, there's so much more infrastructure, so much more money involved in it. They're so much more financially viable. There's so many levels that are, they're just performing on a completely different level that, if the Balmain Tigers or Western Suburbs were brought in right now, tomorrow, at their peak as an organisation, they just could not compete in the NRL. They wouldn't be able to do it on any level. And, I was kind of lucky when the rationalisation happened in Australia, in that my club was one of the biggest producers of talent. It was backed by the biggest leagues club chain in Australia. And so there were those two big things. And on top of that, the supporter base was not too bad as well.
And New Zealand were paying the bills.
Well, and that helped too. Yeah, it helped. All of it helped. And we got in. But it was luck that we had the biggest junior base. It's just the luck of the draw. But just being on the edge of Sydney, like, we're a Sydney-based club that is, tens of kilometres away from the nearest one. Not really any other NRL club can say that. So it was
Manly
luck.
now, I guess.
Well, in Manly, I counted it once. I think it's only something like 16 kilometres from the SFS to Brookvale Oval. It takes you 2.5 hours to do that drive. But still, and you don't want to see any club fall. But, seeing the Dragons go, seeing the Illawarra Steelers go. But damn, it's at least Illawarra and Wollongong gets games.
Yeah.
You know, at least we see the Dragons still out there in some capacity. It sucks, but sometimes you got to prepare for the future and change your, sometimes you got to change your history today.
That's right. And rugby league's been all about change since day one.
Mm-hmm.
Why stop now?
Yeah, exactly. So I reckon it would be cool to see the NRL invest. I don't think they will, unfortunately, and it sucks. But if they do, man, the changes they'd want would be massive.
Yeah, and they'd need to make them immediately, wide-ranging, fast. I don't think they can do it in small stage steps because it'll just cost them too much money.
Yeah, I agree. It would be something like, say they announced it tomorrow. I think you would say next season we're running the competition as is, but the following year is going to be a completely new competition. We're going to have these teams involved. It's going to be over this length of time. The salary cap will be brought back to this level, and you've got a year to be ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, you're not part of the comp.
And then say, we want teams in these areas.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to set up the lower grade competition.
Yeah.
Challenge Cup, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I dare say the game at the moment is in such a state where that the RFL would pretty much just welcome the NRL coming in, and because the RFL could just say, not our decision.
Yeah, I agree.
They can come out of the whole thing as the good guys. So if it goes a bit pear-shaped somewhere,
mm-hmm.
the RFL can just say, we're the good guys here. We didn't issue any of this.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, look, the Rugby Football League would absolutely love for the Challenge Cup to have some interest in Australia and have an NRL team involved in it.
Maybe we could put our wooden spoon team in there.
I think they'd walk in. Can you imagine the Bronx? Can you imagine Payne Haas and, David Fafita and Stagg and the likes of those players?
Well, if it was the who was that Turner that was coaching?
Oh,
yeah, we've forgotten his name already.
Oh, man, his name already?
That's how insignificant he was. We've even forgotten who he is. Seabold,
that's it, yeah.
If Anthony Seabold was still coaching, they'd lose anyway.
Yeah, probably.
He doesn't know how to coach a team to win in Queensland.
That's true.
Because remember, the only time they won a game was when they all fucked off away from him, did their own shit.
That was so weird. A week off. Don't even come in. Don't worry. And they performed really, really well.
Yep. So yeah, if he's coached there, then they won't win anything in the Challenge Cup. So that'd be good to see.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. Have you got any emails?
Let me check out the website.
Let's do that.
Because we want people to go to fergoonthefreak.com, go to the contact section, and that's where you can ask any questions or anything you want said on the podcast, anything like that at all. No one's done it.
No one's done it.
No one.
Have we got any reviews? No reviews.
I didn't check the reviews, actually.
I just did. There's got none on there.
Okay. You know what we'll do? We'll do a episode. Maybe this week we can go through the comments on YouTube and have a bit to say on what people have been saying on YouTube. That'd be good fun.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that was going to be about us trying to remember what the hell we said.
Yeah. Yeah, we've said some things.
We've said some things. I can't remember them all.
No.
We do record at very late times at night. Half the time we're talking on here with our eyes shut.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think that pretty much wraps it up then.
Yeah, it's been a good episode. I've enjoyed it.
It has. We've had a good purge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if you want to purge the hair off your nuts, make sure you go to manscaped.com.
Exactly. You can purge your genitals of every single follicle of hair just by going to manscaped.com. Make sure you put in the code NRL. That's our exclusive code. It's only for our listeners. But you can give it to your friends too. Say, hey, go to this website, chuck in NRL, and you'll get 20% off and free shipping, 30-day money-back guarantee. What were we recommending to our listeners? Because we've got the perfect package 3.0, but there's a new one. There's an upgraded one.
An upgraded lawnmower?
No, an upgraded package.
Oh yeah, they did have an upgraded package on there, which has got the weed whacker in there, I believe.
Yeah, what was that one called?
That was the nose trimmer thing, the performance package.
The performance
Is that
package. That's it. Yeah. You're right. So the performance package, it's basically the perfect package, except as you say, it's got the nose clipper in it. Haven't tried the nose clipper yet.
No. It does look like it's used for. It could probably be used for putting tech screws into your patio as well. So that's pretty neat too.
It does look like. You know what? It's because they're so well made. Like,
bloody oath.
They're so well made. They just they're robust. You get it and you're like, oh, this is a good bit of tech. It's pretty cool. So yeah, get the performance package. That's the way to go. If you want to get the Rolls Royce of manscaping, you just get everything done then. You're sweet. You're sorted.
Bloody oath.
Yeah.
And that performance package comes with the boxes as well. You get the ball preserver, the ball reviver. You get the paper there that all your ball hair goes onto. The magic mat.
And you get the bag that it not your ball bag, but you get the toiletries bag that it all goes in, and it's really nice. Looks really nice.
And a pair of boxes. They're both free.
Oh, the microfiber boxes I love.
Yeah, anti-chafing boxes.
Yeah, and they just feel so good. Like, I didn't realize how good microfiber feels until I felt it against my smooth balls.
And that's $169.99 before the discount.
Yeah. Whack on 20% off and free shipping. Boom.
And it's down to about $136 or so.
Yeah, and you're sweet. You're sorted.
You don't have hair to worry about.
No.
That's pretty good. And the weed whacker, it's not just for the nostrils. You can use it in your ears too if you've got a bit of Brussels sprouts coming out of the old ears.
Yeah. Yeah, John Howard, if you're listening to this, man.
Yeah, mate. You need to get two of these, one for each side of your face.
Wasn't going to say anything, but dude.
Man, you're just turning into hair.
It's like a tumbleweed.
It's just a tumbleweed with legs.
Yeah.
Man, come on.
Who's somebody in rugby league that could use a bit of, trimming up like that?
Gordon Tallis?
Yeah, you reckon?
Probably.
Do you reckon Wayne Bennett? I reckon Wayne Bennett's got that sorted, hey?
Yeah, I tell you what, I wouldn't mind if Matty John's got the weed whacker and put one in each ear and just left them on. Just leave them in there. No, Matty, leave them there, mate. They're good. They're working.
He'd be like, I've got this really good idea. I've got 2 ears. I'd buy 3 of them.
No, as soon as he says, I've got this really good idea, someone says, put a lawnmower 3.0 in his mouth.
Yeah.
Get that on the tongue.
Yeah.
Well, that got a bit dark in a hurry.
I know, right? I'm going to have to put my pants back on.
Yeah. I'm going to have to fight. I threw them away at some stage.
Oh, nice.
The thunder and the lightning got me all excited. I went, oh, pants off.
That's the loudest thunder I have heard on the podcast.
Yeah, that was a pretty solid one.
Yeah.
So it's good to get a bit of change in weather here from either stinking hot or miserable cold.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bit of both.
Yeah, it's nice.
Melbourne. Anywho, wrapping on now. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you all next time.